Our third section will be welcoming candidates for Senate District N. And that would be Roger Holland and Carl Johnson. Gentlemen, if you'll come forward. I'm sorry. Care Clift. Okay. Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. They don't have everybody on here. And there it is, and I knew that too. So my apologies. As we've started with each of the other sections, we'd like to give each one of you 1 minute to introduce yourselves to the audience out there. And we'll start with Carol. I'm sort of like here and talk straight into it.
I need to get back.
Very audience.
My head goes over the top. I am Care Clift. I'm running for Senate N. I'm probably the only person in this room that lives in District 27. Okay, I'm just going to move it a little bit then. I'm too tall for this. Okay, so I'll start over again. I'm Care Clift, and I actually live in District 27, which is part of Senate N. And I'm very pleased to be here. I went to the big HALO meeting in December, I think it was, where you had the history and everything like that. And that was the most fascinating meeting. It was just wonderful to hear all of that. We share the big park, the Far North Bicentennial Park, which is in the middle of Senate N. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and a teacher. I have lived in Alaska for 41 years. And I've taught in the rural Alaska, and I've taught here in Anchorage, right in District N, as a matter of fact, for 10 years. And I'm, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, sorry. Yes, anyway, the thing is, I know how to solve the education problems, and I'm going down there to fix those problems. And I am going to stop right now, but not beholden to anybody.
And Roger?
Technical adjustment. Hello, my name is Roger Holland, running for Alaska State Senate District N. I've lived on the Anchorage hillside since 2012. In 2009, we had the opportunity to come up to Alaska. For the last 10 years, I've worked with in a metrology lab with the Department of Transportation. My work history is kind of varied. I've done about 10 or 12 years in the private sector, about 10 or 12 years in the public sector. I've actually worked about 10 years in academia, and for the last 30 years, I've worked as a bosun's mate in the Coast Guard Reserves. When I decided to run late last year, I didn't even really think I had much of a chance to beat my opponent at the time, Senate President Kathy Giessel, but I knew the argument had to be put before the people. And I really had serious problems with the way that the Alaska Senate was being managed and with a lot of the decisions that was being made in Alaska at the time. But hey, I'd appreciate your consideration, and thank you all for coming in tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Carl Johnson, and I am running because our state is in a fiscal crisis that's hurting businesses and families. Now, we've basically gone from one recession to another, and during that time, we've cut 50% of our budget, $4.5 billion. I chose to live in Alaska. I moved here, and I've really been fortunate in the 21 years I've lived here to have opportunities. I've worked as an attorney in natural resource management and as a small business owner. I've visited people around the state, and I've seen them working hard, and I want to make sure other people have the same opportunities I have. My main concerns and why I'm running are, one, our need to diversify our economy so that we don't go into a recession every time the oil prices take a nosedive, and to restore funding to essential services, roads and runways, public education, public safety. I look forward to discussing these issues further tonight, and I thank you for joining us for this evening.
Thank you all. As we were talking about earlier with each of the other sections, the biggest issue that faces Alaska is our current fiscal situation. What I'd like is for each one of you to take a minute. Again, I know it's difficult to do that, but give us some details on what steps you'd take from day one to solve the budget situation. Again, please be specific and do not say everything is on the table. And it's, do the best you can. And Carl, we'll start with you.
Well, at first, the answer is not cuts to our central government services. We've cut 50% in the last 8 years. We've flattened out. We can trim a little bit around the edge by going after indirect expenditures. We can stop leaving money on the table, like matching funds for roads, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, $4 million we just left on the table this week because we didn't have a capital budget for that. We also need to talk seriously about new revenue. Our Constitution requires that we get the maximum benefit for our resources. So are we getting enough for our natural resources, whether it's in the form of taxes or royalties? We have to talk about other forms of revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Roger?
So hello, could you repeat the question again? I have hearing aids and sometimes I don't pick up everything everybody says.
Absolutely.
So, we're going to be $1.5 to $2.9 billion short this year. That's nothing new. We've been short $3 billion every year for the last 5 or 6 years. One of the big problems I had was there is no effort to really get spending under control. This year, we will not make expenditures meet revenue. A lot of people talk about an income tax. Governor Walker looked at an income tax in 2015 and a 6% income tax produced about $200 million. That is a drop in the bucket to what Alaska's needs are for our current government size. We do have to look at everything. We have to get better value for our money. It is going to be a difficult few years ahead. There's nothing easy about it, but we're going to have to work on getting our spending under control while we wait for our oil revenues to come, and while we look for the economy to come back, for seafood industry to come back, tourism to come back, work on the new mineral opportunities we have. Thank you.
Well, everything is not on the table. For one thing, I believe that we have a lot of flatlining to do, especially in the area of education. We have a lot of flatlining to do in the area of healthcare. We need to stop letting everybody have access to that. We need to just kind of cut it right now. I mean, cut off the access to that right now and not put new people in. We need to take care of the people that we already have. So that's the first thing I would tell you. There are a lot of areas that can be cut. They can still be cut. And there are a lot of assistance that we need from all of the departments, all the department heads. I would say every department head needs to look at their department and look at the ways that money is being wasted and money needs to be cut. And the other part of that is nothing is off the table. So here we go.
Thank you. And we do have some questions that are coming in from the audience here. This one is for Roger. Your website states that you believe Alaska can have a balanced budget without an income tax. How can this be accomplished without drastically reducing services?
Well, like I said, Governor Walker looked at an income tax in 2015, and honestly, $200 million is not going to address the $3 billion shortfalls we faced every year for the last 5 or 6 years. We do need to get spending under control. And so I mentioned I was from Louisiana. Louisiana, a state of about 5 million people, has 70 school districts. Alaska, a state of about 750,000 people, has 53 school districts. 50% of all the education dollars have a real tough time getting to the classroom. There's lots of, I hear people saying, oh, we're cut to the bone, we're cut to the bone. I do not look around. I was a DOT employee for 10 years. I do not look around and see that we're cut to the bone. I do not believe we need to cut to the bone. We just need to look at what we're spending and what value we're getting for it and make some common sense decisions on how to go forward. everybody has 5 or 10% in their budget that they can cut, and they can do it now. Thank you.
This question will be for Carl. Carl, do you believe that the addition of an income tax or a statewide sales tax, or even a new corporate tax on business in the state right now, is a good idea as the state of Alaska struggles through a pandemic and the highest unemployment rate in the nation? Could you please explain your answer? Yes or no?
I don't think either an income tax or a sales tax are a good idea. But there are a lot of things that are not a good idea when you're bleeding in the emergency room, but there are things you have to do. And unfortunately, the management of our budget over the last 10 years has left us with few options. So what you really need to ask yourself is if you are going to select a candidate and vote for somebody who's going to live in a fiscal reality world, not suggesting $10,000 PFD checks or other things that we certainly cannot afford, but are willing to take serious hard looks at revenue options that are available. Again, these are not my first choice, my second or even my third choice, but I'm going to, my point of running for office is not to tell people what they want to hear, but tell people that there's going to be somebody in Juneau who will be there to make the hard decisions to get our state back on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Our next question is for Carolyn. Carolyn, 40%, I'm sorry. The question is, what is your solution to improving the education system in Alaska, financially and otherwise?
Well, the first thing we need to look at is the administration. There are 54 school districts in Alaska. Some of these school districts don't even have close to 100 students in them. And there are a lot of geographic areas that have like little city schools in them that could all be combined and make less administration, less boards, less payroll that has to go out. So that's one thing that we could do. We want the money to go into the classrooms. Plus we need to have better infrastructure when it comes to internet. There's some places out in the bush where the internet is not reliable. And if we're gonna combine classes, or we're going to get the best teachers out to those students, we need to have good internet service out to the rural areas. And we need to utilize the teachers as facilitators more than just teaching every single subject. And but I believe the young children do need to have direct instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. This next section is going to be on the permanent fund. Again, a very important thing to Alaskans. There are 3 separate questions. I'm going to ask each one to answer one of these questions. And we are going to start with Carl. And Carl, the first question is, our elected leaders have significantly reduced the amount of the permanent fund dividend checks. They've taken about $3 billion from Alaska's economy. Was this the correct action to be taken? And if so, why?
When you vote people in office, you're asking them to make hard decisions. When looking at a fiscal situation where for many years we did rely almost exclusively on oil to pay for our state budget, and that wasn't doing it anymore. So the state, with the authority it has in the Constitution, as affirmed by the Supreme Court, decided to take the action that it did. It stopped the cutting of essential government services that we need, like public safety, education, roads. It did provide a balance where there was a dividend issued, and it also avoided implementing income tax and sales taxes. You know, the Institute of Social and Economic Research has looked at the issue and has concluded that cutting the dividend is more harmful to families, but there was still a dividend available that people were able to receive, and that money was able to be put to use however people need to do it, whether it's for the important things like utilities or for being able to put that money back into the economy. So it was a tough decision, but it was the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. This question will be for Roger. Same kind of question, only a little different. SB 26 gave the legislature the right to decide future dividend amounts instead of utilizing the historic formula. This allowed the legislature to determine whether or not the people will receive a permanent fund dividend check and the amount of that check. Was this appropriate? Was it necessary? Why or why not?
You know, I hear a lot of grief about supporting the statutory permanent fund dividend. As I mentioned before, we've had $3 billion deficits for each of the last 6 years. Does anybody remember when's the last time we had a full permanent fund dividend payment? It is not supersized PFDs that are killing us. It's just the size of spending. I think it was a mistake. The permanent fund dividend program worked fine for 35 years, but the state did identify, say Governor Walker in the legislature at the time identified some low-hanging fruit, some easy money to go for that they could choose to go for instead of trying to get spending under control. And that was, that was a big problem I saw over those years. Every year they went right back to the CBR. Every year they took another $3 billion out and never addressed the spending problems. We looked at, there's a curve that looks at Alaska in 10 years and 20 years, and spending will continue to be our problem. We will continue to outrun our ability to generate revenue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roger. And for Carolyn, many elected leaders state that they were forced to divert the majority of the permanent fund investment earnings to help pay for government now in order to save the permanent fund dividend program for the future. Do you agree with this statement? Is this correct? Why or why not?
No, they were not forced to divert the permanent fund dividend money. I think the whole issue comes from, we are not working with our business partners as a business. We are working with our business partners and the people with the idea that we are going to extract revenue from the people. We're going to tax the people. We're going to tax the oil companies. We're going to tax everybody to bring that revenue in. And if we can't get that tax, then we'll take the permanent fund away from people. It is a tax. It's not saying I'm not, it is a tax. When we take the permit, either the IRS considers it income and they tax it. It is a tax that you're taking from the people when you take the permanent fund dividend. Now, my idea is that we will not return all the dividends to everybody in one fell swoop. That we'll start out with a modest dividend based on the formula, and that we will add to that until the people that are applying for permanent fund dividends will get more than they would have gotten otherwise. And I've got to stop here.
Thank you. I know that's an incredibly difficult thing to answer in 1 minute, but I think it was very enlightening for the people in the audience to see. The question now is for all of you, and it has to do with something that's happening in the country right now. And do you disagree or agree with the idea that we need to defund the police? And what position do you take on law enforcement in Alaska? Please explain your answer. And we will go ahead and start with Roger.
Defunding the police is really a hard thing to put your mind around. Where would we be if we defunded the police? Just, probably less than 20 short years ago, our law enforcement, our first responders were among the most respected and popular in the nation. It's really sad what's happened today. No, of course, I do not believe in defunding the police. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen? Same question, yes.
I also do not believe in defunding the police. I think what we really need to work on is something that's called qualified immunity. We want to make sure that when our police do use excessive force, that there is a legitimate reason for that and that it's not used frivolously. And I think also we ought to encourage our people to remember that they are their own first defense. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carl?
Thank you. I think this is a really important question. I think defunding the police is just poor messaging. It suggests to eliminate funding for the police. I know that for the communities where this is happening in the lower 48, it's driven by a disconnect between the communities and the police and how they talk to each other and how they communicate. I know from my own work as an adjunct instructor in the university system in their justice courses that there's a lot of studies that show community policing is a really effective way to build bridges between police and their communities. As for Alaska, I am proud to have the endorsement of the Anchorage Police Department Employees Association. I have worked with law enforcement in my career, and I see law enforcement as having an important role in making sure that people in our communities feel safe, that businesses can operate safely without any harm to their property. So they are an important part of our community, and we need to support them as much as they support us. Thank you.
Did everybody have time? Okay, you all answered that one. Thank you. So we're going to have 3 separate questions for each of the candidates. The first question will be for Carolyn, and 40% of our students fail to meet grade level standards. Lobbyists insist the problem is that we need more money on schools, but we already have some of the highest education spending in the nation. What new ideas could you bring to Juneau?
Well, one of the ideas that I've heard, and so this is not original, but that we need to separate the maintenance and building budget from the classroom budget. Because what's going on here is that a lot of these schools in the rural areas, they have huge expenses when it comes to building maintenance. Building maintenance that's way out of line when you consider the per student ratio. We have teachers. We're going to have internet capability in each school, especially for the upper grades. All of those things are important. We need our kids to learn to read by 3rd grade. If they can't read by 3rd grade, then we need to be very strict and give them another year to make sure that they can catch up and not just promote kids. We need that extra year. And there's, I have my master's degree in reading. So I have a lot of more ideas that I can help everybody with that on, and my husband actually was a superintendent. So we have a lot of ideas to help with the area of education.
Thank you. This question is for Carl. Everyone agrees that we have to reduce spending. But the fact is that Juneau has a lot of lobbyists representing numerous organizations and businesses. Lobbyists can have an oversized influence on spending. What can the legislature do that could put lobbyists and citizens like us on an even playing field? Good question for potentially new Senate.
Well, I'm a big fan of one person, one vote. And that is, for me, not only voting, but also interacting with your public officials. No one person is going to have more weight with me. Now, this would have been a lot easier if we had moved our capital away from Juneau, like the citizens of Alaska have voted before to do. It would have made this legislature a lot more accessible to its people. So, and I think that one of the issues that ties into this too is calls for term limits, but term limits actually only promote the power of lobbyists. So if you want to have power of lobbyists, demand that your legislators be engaged with you, that they have town hall meetings with you, constituent meetings, that they attend your community council meetings, they keep you regularly informed so you can hold them accountable personally. If you can't be there in Juneau like those lobbyists can, make sure they come to you and they keep engaged with you, and that way you have a chance to interact with them and let them know whether or not you're serving their interests. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl. And sort of circling back around on the education issue, since it's an important one for Roger, not many years ago, failing students were forced to repeat that grade. Today, 40% of our students cannot achieve grade level standards. Should we mandate that failing students repeat that grade? Yes or no, please explain.
So should we, retention? Yes, and I believe that's a study that's been looked at. It's one of the big solutions for Alaska's problems with education. We're I think the 3rd highest in the nation. We spend $16,000 per student on education. I mentioned before with our 53, 54 school districts, a lot of our money gets tied up in administrative overhead. So yes, retention is a good idea. Social promotion is not a great idea. And just on another side note, the foundation funding formula that Alaska uses to determine funding levels for schools, it doesn't reward performance. It's based on numbers of enrollment and needs of the students in the school. And actually, the higher the school performs, the less funding they are allocated by the program. And while I got time, 15 more seconds, you know, it's a great idea to get the legislature out of Juneau, put them on the road system. Leave the capital in Juneau, I'm fine with that, but get the legislature on the road system. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. We have one final question in this section of the questions, and it's for all of you. And each of you obviously can answer it separately, but if you're elected as a new legislature, will you be joining a caucus? Why or why not? And we'll go ahead and start with that.
So, well, join a caucus? A caucus is not a bad thing. It's, the binding caucus is a bad thing. The binding caucus is a uniquely Alaskan product. It's something only Alaska uses for budget matters. And I think one other state in the United States does it for procedural matters. I would join a Republican majority or a majority that did not have a binding caucus as a requirement.
Yes, well, I'm beholden to no party, and I will be the loner. I will not be joining a caucus. If I do, it will be the everybody caucus, and it won't be a binding caucus. So that's my first answer to that. But I am not beholden to anybody. I don't get any money from any party. I don't get money from anybody at all, except for individuals who have contributed to my campaign. So no, I'm not going to be joining a caucus unless it is my kind of caucus, which means I can be an independent and I can rule, I can decide in favor of my constituents in an independent manner.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Carl.
I'm not running to be elected to a caucus. I'm running to be elected to the Alaska State Senate. So if elected, that's where I'm going to serve. I'm going to work with any member of the Senate who wants to move Alaska forward, who wants to fight and deal with these challenges that we have. I don't take an oath to a party. You know, as a former Boy Scout, I still remember my Boy Scout oath. As a Navy veteran, I remember my oath of enlistment, and my oath as a senator will be similar, and that is to support and defend the Constitution of the state of Alaska and the United States of America. Not to support the party, not to join a caucus. I will go wherever I can go to be effective for the residents of this district.
And thank you, Carl. That concludes that part of our questions and answers for this evening. I hope it gave you some insight into the candidates' thoughts and feelings about the budget, the permanent fund, education, and other issues in the state. What I have now is the personal questions for you. So if you'd like to kind of come up here and sort of each one of you, I'll just ask, take a few, 30 seconds or so, but tell me which community groups or charities you're active in. And
I'm very active in my synagogue, and I teach Sunday school, and I contribute to a lot of different charities across the country, and I'm very active in working with parents, families that have been in trouble with OCS and with fathers that are having trouble with custody of their children. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Thank you.
I'm in the Coast Guard Reserves, but they pay me to be in that, so that's not a charity. But I'm also in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which is the volunteer uniform branch of the Coast Guard. It's a great place to be. I'm in the Knights of Columbus. I'm in the church maintenance team at the Holy Cross Church. I'm in the Reserve Organization of America, the American Legion, Coast Guard Combat Veterans Association, and I think that's NRA. Yeah.
Thank you, Roger.
Well, when I first moved to Alaska, I was really active in photography and theater, but on top of having a day job as an attorney, I had to give up one over time. So I stuck with photography. So I've been involved with a local organization called the Alaska Society of Outdoor Nature Photographers for 20 years. I'm on their board of directors now. Over time, I've also donated my time and my photography skills to the Great Land Trust to help their projects and to help other organizations that are working on conserving public lands and converting to conservation easements in Alaska. My wife and I have been contributors to the Alaska Sea Life Center for many years. And for 5 years in my spare time, I also worked on a book about the Bristol Bay region to promote the beauty of that region.
Thank you. It sounds like the three of you are very, very busy, and that's very nice to hear. So we're to the choices part of the section here this evening. If the three of you would like to kind of gather around me, I'm just going to ask you some questions, and each one of you, I'll just point you to the answer. But we'll just start with it. These are very helpful. They'll tell. I mean, Bed Bath & Beyond. I mean, that was great, James. So that was the first. Just kidding. I'm not sure if James is paying attention. But what's your preferred dinner entree, halibut or steak?
Steak.
Okay. And I like this one. What is the candy bar that you simply can't resist? Okay. Wow. Roger.
A not frozen from up to years. Because when they freeze, it ruins the nougat.
There you go. An art of the tea. All right. If there's only two salad choices, which would you take? An iceberg wedge or a Caesar? Carl? Love it. Roger?
Iceberg wedge.
Carolyn? Oh, okay. Well, there you go. House pets, dogs or cats? Roger?
Well, I'm a dog guy, but my daughter's so we have cats.
So those are the both.
No, no dog.
No dog. Oh, so cute. Cats are all easy and okay.
Dogs and grandkids.
Dogs and grandkids. Great. I love it. So, vanilla bean or chocolate chip ice cream? Carl? Well, yeah, I would suppose if you asked, you certainly could. Hardbacks, paperbacks, or ebooks? Carolyn? Awesome. Favorite music? Carl? Wow. Okay, that's specific. Your favorite music?
Favorite music, probably country.
Country? And Carolyn? Okay, a rocker. Aha. There you go. Donuts or bagels?
Donuts, hot donuts.
Hot donuts.
This is an easy one for Alaska because you can't put on a donut.
I love it. Well, then that segues into this question. Hunting and fishing or the butcher shop? Carl? Roger?
With my skills, the butcher shop.
Well, there you go. All right.
We can't hear their answers.
You can't.
We're having a good time.
The folks in the room are having a great time. So I'll try to get out of the way and they can just sort of walk in. Why don't you guys stand in front of it? There's just a couple more. The perfect Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody at your house or everybody anywhere else? Carolyn?
Everybody at mine.
I got to admit, everybody at the house.
Everybody at the house.
Chainsaw or tree service? I like that one. Huh?
Chainsaw. I hate alders.
Roger?
I have a height limit of about 30 feet. Above 30 feet, I go with the tree service.
And Carolyn?
I guess a tree service because I'm not going to do it.
Okay, great. And the last question, what was the best form of the year?
Halo.
Form.
Halo.
Thank you all so much.
Definitely the most fun.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
You're our first in-person forum.
I think this may be the only in-person forum around, so we're very happy to have been that. We'll finally end up this section with each of the candidates having 1 minute to do a closing statement. And we'll start off with Carl.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I want to thank the opportunity invitation from the HALO board to be here this evening. You know, I think our experiences, create the kind of people that we are and how we look at the world and what our values are. So I want to kind of quick summarize who I am so you know where I'm coming from. I've worked in private sector as an attorney, as a photographer, and now as a tourism operator. I've worked in public service in all three branches of the government at the county, tribal, state, and federal level. All of these things have shown me the tools that I need to immediately go into Juneau and effectively work hard for the people of this district, to do the people's business. I am ready and willing. I have the skills and the ability to work with anyone to work on Alaska's hardest problems. You know, when I was in the Navy, it was all about the mission. It was all about the task. It was all about the threat. I didn't ask a radar operator what his political ideology was. I didn't ask somebody at the sonar controls whether or not they were a person of faith. We did the job. We worked together. None of those things matter as long as we did the work. And that's my approach to coming to the legislature in Juneau. Not for party purity, not to pursue a particular agenda, but making Alaska a place where people can survive, thrive, and want to stay and raise their children. And I thank you, and I ask for your vote in the general election.
Yes, also thanks to the HALO team. You know, I don't pretend to know all the answers, and I know we have a lot of difficult questions ahead. It's the path forward is not very clear, but I'm very interested. I mean, I worked for DOT for 10 years. I could have kept my mouth shut. I could have kept my head down, worked in my little job, and worked for another 10 years, carried myself into retirement. It was a big gamble. It was a big risk, my wife and I thought. But we saw that there was a problem in Juneau, and we realized that I had to make the effort to step forward and try to help make some positive change in Alaska. We do. It's kind of great having this forum tonight. It's kind of like the old normal, and you know, it's we do need to kind of try to recover where we were, get our economy back up again, get our Alaskans back to work. And I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you so much.
So I'm all about choices, and I'm all about protecting your choices and how you live and how you make your money and how you conduct your life. And I'm pro-business, and I'm for back to work. And I want to give you, the independent Alaskans, the ability to make decisions and spend your money on the life that you choose. I'm running to be your independent voice in the Alaska Senate. I don't think our legislators have respected us hardworking individual Alaskans. They think they know best what our families and our communities need, and they think they know best how to spend our money, and they think they know what we want. I want to bring the legislators back here to South Central so we can look them in the eyes. And that's on my website. It's not because I heard two people say it already. And I'm going to sponsor legislation for restoring the PFD and more public school choices, sustainable resource development, more choice in elections, protection of rights, due process in family court. And please go to my website and contact me, carecliftforalaska.com. Make a real change in Juneau and vote for Care Clift.
Paid for by Carl Johnson for Alaska. P.O. Box 11022, Anchorage, Alaska 99511.